What's up guys, it's Offbeat here, back with an episode of Behind the Bars, and this week I'm talking about my latest track, Even the Score. So as always, I want to say a huge shout out and thank you to everyone who has supported so far. So if you've liked it or commented, I've put some of my favourite comments on the screen so you guys know who you are. Thank you very much. Interestingly, this one has actually divided people a little bit, and I sort of expected that to happen, to be honest. It is very different in tone and style to my previous track, So I'm Late and Hole in My Pocket. And if that's the case, if you're not really feeling it, do you know what? No, I'm kidding. First of all, that's absolutely fine. You guys haven't got to like everything I do. And secondly, like my motto has always been and always will be, make the kind of music that I would listen to. And if other people like it, that's a bonus. So, you know, there's more to me than just the comedy stuff. I have got like multiple facets of my personality, and sometimes I'm going to want to explore the darker, more serious side. So if you like that, great. If not, that's cool. It's still who I am. I'm always going to be making these sorts of tracks. So Even the Score is basically a story about me signing a deal with a major record label and then getting thrown into a prison and eventually rallying the support of the other inmates and starting a riot and overthrowing the guards and the powers that be. It's basically a metaphor for how I think major record labels treat artists, and how on the surface, on the outside, it's all glitz and glamour, but then behind the scenes, actually, a lot of the time the artists are getting treated really badly and having their freedom and their creative control taken away. However, with today's technology, artists can be just as successful, if not more successful, by being independent. And that bit is really important to me. I didn't want this to just be a track complaining about the record industry. I wanted there to be like hope and there to be like a solution and a positive message. And that message is, if you are an independent artist and you want to, then you can succeed without needing to sign to a major label. Well, originally the idea came from just hearing like horror stories about other artists that had been signed to major labels. So people that I know, or like documentaries and stuff that I've seen as well, and hearing just these awful things, but also particularly the worst stories about artists who get shelved. So that's where the record label decides they don't want to put their music out, but they're also going to prevent them from putting it out anywhere else. So you get these artists who are legally obligated to just basically rot and be consigned to just sitting on a shelf for the rest of their life. And the more I thought about that, the more I sort of imagined how awful that would be, and that sense of having your freedom taken away and then being trapped. And that just, the more I thought about it, the more kind of parallels I drew with prison, basically. And that's where the idea originally came from. Not to mention the fact that I am not obsessed, but very interested in like prison documentaries and films and things like that. So like Shawshank Redemption, TV shows like Oz, which is like a fairly old HBO show, even things like Orange is the New Black, and some British stuff as well. There's a film I watched when I was younger called Scum, which is about a British borstal, which had like a big impact on me as well. So I'm just kind of fascinated by how human beings adjust to being in these sort of confined environments and how they create their own like mini societies and communities. And it's something I've always wanted to explore, but not by writing a story about me actually going to prison. I wanted there to be like a metaphor where I could still explore the same story, but also tell like a more positive message at the same time. And I mean, there's lots of other different influences that have gone into this. It's a big like melting pot of ideas and inspiration from different places. But the other big contributor, I would say, is a song by an artist called Dirty Goods called License to Skill. And it's a grime song, and it's about him basically infiltrating a major record label and discovering that there's this secret 13th floor, and he listens to the bosses talking, and he discovers that there's a conspiracy to basically sign and then control all of the black artists and essentially hold them back. So that track's called License to Skill. It's by a guy called Dirty Goods, and I would strongly recommend checking it out if you haven't heard it. This is a bit of a tough one, to be honest, because normally there's like a standout line or two that's like humorous or like a clever play on words, and that's why I tend to like them. This track hasn't really got any of that because it's basically just a big story. So every line is like telling a bit of that story. I guess in terms of like the overall sentiment, the bit that stands out the most to me is the bit where I'm like rallying the support of the other inmates, and I say,
with platforms like social and blog posts for reading, downloads and podcasts, and yes, even streaming, it's with these tools that we can fight for freedom and prove to the labels that we do not need them.
And the reason that I particularly like that bit is because I'm just really appreciative of the wealth of tools that we have at our disposal now to market and promote ourselves, which we just didn't have. Like even 10 years ago, there were things like social media, which were around, but they were kind of in their infancy, and like streaming services certainly were nowhere near as like developed and evolved as they are now. And yeah, I just wanted to sort of celebrate that, and that section is kind of doing that. Because like I say, I didn't want this track to just be a big whinge about the record industry. It's more about like how we can change it and what we can do. And these tools, I believe, are the way to do that. And the reason that I say, yes, even streaming, and I emphasize even, is because I hear a lot of artists complaining about streaming and saying like, oh, Spotify, they only pay you like a fraction of a penny per play. And yeah, that is true. Like obviously I'd prefer it if they paid us more. But what people I think are missing is the opportunity that they give you to get out to a worldwide audience. And I get people all the time discovering me through Spotify and other streaming platforms who would never have heard of me otherwise, you know, like, so yeah, in an ideal world, you might want people to go out and just buy your album from a shop. Even back in the day though, when that was the only option, you still would have only got a fraction of that, like from the record label. But now the streaming services allow you to get out to people from all over the world. So I think they're a force for good. And I'm just, with all of these things, I'm just so grateful to be alive in this time where this technology is available to allow us to have careers and not rely on a third party, not rely on a big record industry that's corrupt and is out there to take advantage of us. We have control to do this ourselves, guys, and that's a big deal. Okay, so I asked you guys to send in any questions that you had about the lyrics of this song. This is Behind the Bars, so this week it's focused on the lyrics. If you've got any questions or have already sent in any questions about the artwork or the animation, that's cool. Didn't listen to what I said, but that's fine. But I will save those and answer those next week in the making of video. So the first question comes from Jacob, and he asks, do you have any experiences like this yourself? And the answer is no. I've never been signed to a major label, and I'm pretty sure after this song I probably won't be either. But it isn't based on personal experience, it's based on accounts that I've heard from other people, like friends and friends of friends who've told me things, and also just documentaries and general horror stories that I've just heard about artists getting signed and being screwed over. So I have put out a couple of individual tracks through like smaller independent record labels, and that's generally been a good experience, but I've never signed to a major label, and I don't think I ever would. I would always rather be in control of my own destiny and my own career and just retain complete creative control, because for me that's what it's about. It's not about being super famous or super rich, it's about expressing myself, making the music that I want to make, and why would I ever want to put a barrier on that? And the second question comes from The Great Gel, who asks, who is the Fat Cat based on? And the answer is no one in particular. It's really just like an amalgamation of similar sleazy corporate boss types. It's a fairly like tried and tested character style in popular culture. So there are lots of examples. There's also lots of examples in real life, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a pretty popular character type. And I would say that if I was inspired by one example of it, it would probably be one from a cartoon from my childhood, so quite a while ago, called Biker Mice from Mars. And it was the bad guy from that called Lawrence Limburger. But yeah, there's lots of different influences, but that's the one that sort of springs to mind the most. And massive shout to any 90s kids who get that reference. But yeah, also even the score is a sequel to another track that I wrote called Prohibition. And at the end of the video for Prohibition, you see the same building for Capitol Records, not Capitol Records, which is a real record label, so no lawsuits please. But you see a character called Mr. B. Powers, who again is like a fat, suited, sleazy, cigar-smoking boss type. So this character, the Fat Cat, is sort of a continuation of him. Somehow he's just turned into a cat in this story. But when I originally wrote this song, I didn't intend on any of the characters actually being animals. So you could argue that because the whole song is a metaphor, actually the animals aren't real animals, they're just sort of, they're metaphorical as well, like representations of the characteristics that the different prison staff portray. You could argue that. You could also argue that I just wanted to make a cool video with some animals in. Either or. Cool, so that's it for this episode of Behind the Bars. Thank you very much for watching, and if you've got any questions about the artwork or the animation, then please send them in. Either email them to me at info@iamoffbeat.com or leave them as a comment below and I will do my best to include them in the making of video, which will be coming out next. And finally, if you do want to help an independent artist like myself overthrow the corrupt, evil record industry, then you can support me by picking up a copy of my album directly from me from my shop. You can go to iamoffbeat.com/album and grab a copy of this album. This is track 6, no it's not, this is track 7 on the album. But there are 15 in total, and there's also a secret bonus track at the end. So yeah, we're not even halfway through yet, guys, of all the songs that are on here. So if you want to hear them all, grab one from my website, iamoffbeat.com/album. And thank you very much again for watching, and I'll catch you soon. Mwah! Peace!